Hello, everyone. My guest today is Jason Widup. Jason's the VP of Marketing at Metadata. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to talk about this topic.
Absolutely. Yeah. We are going to talk about a broad range of topics from intent, paid social, and hair care products. So, but anyways, I'll start off by saying this, Jason. You guys are at Metadata. You guys are doing some fantastic work with your marketing, at least on organic social. It's something to aspire to. So good job driving that.
Thanks.
But there was one very specific piece of content that you guys put out. It was a talk you gave with chat funnels, and the topic was how the fuck do you activate intent? And that resonated with me because as an intent data provider, one of the challenges that we see is in data, any data from wherever goes only as well as it's been actioned on. And one of the biggest challenges we see is people saying, well, these leads didn't work or this data didn't work because they didn't know how to activate it. How do you think when someone gets a feed of intent data, how should they start thinking of when they're thinking of activation, using it? Where do you start?
Yeah, and I try and minimize the answers I start with. It depends. But this one is one where I'll say it depends a little bit.
Yeah.
And it depends on the source of the intent and like where that intent comes from, how it's sourced. And there's all different kinds of intent. And there's intent providers that also combine a lot of sources and give you a signal.
Yep.
And so it really depends. And so like, for example, if you're using intent data from like a crowdsourced review site, like a Trust Radius or G2, that's one type of intent.
Yep.
People are researching things. If you're using Bombora or something else, it's like, oh, okay, it's topic based. And there's some that use jobs. You know what I mean? Like job openings. I'm combing the job openings and I'm seeing like what skills they're looking for and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that's really where to start. It's like, okay, well, what source of intent is that?
Yep.
And then it's like, okay, well, where would that best come to life or be useful in my funnel? Is it in the very beginning for like cold acquisition? Is there something in that intent that I can leverage for pipeline campaigns? Is there something in there that maybe I can even leverage for customers? And so it runs the gamut. You can maybe even have a grid, like different sources and like different uses. But yeah, it's all over the place, which is kind of good because that way you've got multiple uses for it, but it also can make it more confusing.
Yes, it certainly can, because when you look at all the permutations and combinations from different sources, different use cases, it can grow quite a bit. So let me ask this question. You mentioned about depending on the source, depending on the kind of data, it sort of maps to what kind of use case you're going to do, whether it's top of the funnel campaign or even existing customers. Where do you see B2B marketers using intent the most? Is it more top of the funnel, or is it lower funnel conquesting, or where do you see it the most?
Yeah, I mean, I see it used both in the top of the funnel and in the bottom of the funnel, even in the same type of intent. And there again, I think it kind of can depend on maybe how much awareness you have in the market already for your product or your company. Because if you already have quite a bit of awareness, and then you've got some intent data, you might basically put that into lower funnel campaigns because you're like, okay, people kind of know about us already.
Yeah.
And so maybe I can move right to something lower funnel. But then there's others like, oh, maybe I don't have that much awareness and I at least know these people are, or I think they're in market based on the signals, or maybe not in market, but like researching, and then I can use that same intent, but I can just change the messaging a little bit. I can, not that they know who we are, make the introduction, maybe do some lighter content marketing at the top just to build that relationship to start with. But I think most marketers want to use it for lower funnel.
Yes.
Because basically what they're saying, what the promise, I guess, is like, there are people in market for your solution and you don't know who they are necessarily. You know what I mean? And so the promise of intent is, let me help you skip some of the early stuff where you're trying to market the problem or the category to get people to like start to think about, do I have a problem? Maybe I do. But using intent, you're able to like make that assumption that like, okay, they're doing their own research. So like, maybe I don't have to market the category, or I don't really have to show them their pain because they already have seen it. maybe my competitor advertised them something that got them like researching the pain, which I'm fine with, great.
Sure.
And start researching the pain.
Yeah.
But the intent is like, okay, let me show you the people that are already kind of doing some of their own research. So you don't have to try and just like get them cold, hope that like one of your messages is going to like hit on something that they're having pain on today. And so most marketers are going to want to use it in the low funnel area.
Yeah. So then when thinking of topics or things to track for, to identify this interest or this research, should marketers, when they're thinking of what to track with an intent, should they think of what pain points a customer would have, and that's the topic you should think of? Or rather than saying, hey, I offer a data warehousing software, I want people researching on data warehousing or these specific competitors?
Yeah, I mean, in that, I'm okay with either one. I mean, I just like to know what it is. So that way I know I can like craft my message a little bit more. And so, for example, if I'm using an intent source that's really more focused on like what people are reading, you know what I mean? Like what they're engaging with and what they're
topics,
researching.
Yeah.
Like the topics that they're reading in content. And these content pieces aren't necessarily talking about solutions. You know what I mean? They're like talking about problems and like pain. Yeah, just pain problems, those kinds of things. Then it's like, okay, great. Then I need to introduce them to who we are, and how we solve those problems. But then if I use a different source of like a crowd source review site, then I'm like, okay, they're probably past the pain identification. And now they're in that like solution identification. And because they're looking at providers that they think will solve that pain. And so then I need to move into the like, okay, why should you pick us? How do we stack up against our competitors? It just gives you a way of personalizing your messaging, knowing a little bit more, at scale, knowing a little bit more about where they are in the funnel.
Yep.
And there's some intent providers that actually give you, and I haven't really used one, but they give you like, where are they in the funnel? You know what I mean? They actually try and predict where they are in the funnel. I don't know how accurate it is, but like there are some providers that do that. I think I'm more favorable towards,
wouldn't all intent providers give you a score which reflects where in the funnel they are?
I don't think so. No, I'm trying to think of like some of the intent sources that I use. Some of them I just get counts of things. And so like then I take it and I turn it into something. But yeah, most give you a score, like some kind of, the ones that are around topics and like research topics. I think those are the ones where you can expect a score, but not necessarily that the higher score doesn't necessarily mean they're through the funnel, at least in my interpretation. The higher score just means like more research is going on, or it's more rigorous, or I think we get down to the science of it. It's like, it's how many standard deviations away from like their, the normal research that's going on from that company. And so it's like, it's an indication of the amount compared to history, but not necessarily like, okay, where a score of 98 doesn't mean they're in stage 6. You know what I mean?
So this is a brilliant point you raised, Jason, and I want to dig deeper into this. As a marketer, just from, let's say you're the VP of, not let's say you are the VP of marketing.
Maybe someday.
Maybe someday. Yeah. Once you get older, you will reach there. But let's say when you are thinking, let's say someone gives you a set of accounts that have shown intent around with a score of 80 plus around topics of programmatic advertisement, Facebook advertisement, paid social, or account-based marketing. What you're saying is, according to you, that score is an indication of how active they are and how much they vary, but it doesn't map it to where in a sales stage they're in. If you got the data, how would you manually, if you had to then translate it to a stage, what are the things you would do to predict which stage they would be in?
Yeah. So based on a score, it would be tough. You know what I mean? It would, I would assume that more research means a little deeper. More research, higher score means deeper into the funnel. But that's an assumption. You know, that's an assumption. It could be that like this company just had an offsite, like everyone was talking about whatever, a CDP, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, what's this? I'm like, that's really early on, but you have more people.
Sure.
And so like the surging might look higher and the score might look higher versus a small team at a larger company, kind of figuring out what I need. And they'll start lighter. And so you'll see a little bit of a blip, but then their score is going to probably increase over time. And that will be a little bit more indicative of like the stage. Mm-hmm. But the volume alone, and also you have to think about it, like the intent sources are looking in certain places only.
Right.
Right. And so like if the prospect's research involves moving from place to place, then
which they
they're
do.
going to drop from out of, they're
Yeah.
going to drop out of one intent source, and then they're going to start to show up in another
Yeah.
intent source. And so yeah, it's just kind of like, it's all human behavior, right? Which means it's completely unpredictable. It's like, it's crazy. And so trying to get a score down to like, oh, what does this mean? You just have to test it and experiment with it.
What other factors would you use outside of an intent score to assign a stage? What would you think if you had to think, Jason?
I mean, I would look for first party stuff in addition.
What they're doing on your website?
Yeah. Yep. So like, okay, great. I've got the third party stuff. If I see first party, like from my website, then I'm like, oh, okay. Now they're closer to solution identification. And so, and that'll tell me that they're a little bit further down the funnel. Now they're looking at a pricing page. You know what I mean? Yes. And so like, okay, now they're requesting a demo, you know, or whatever. And so then all that first party data just kind of then plugged into the third party intent data, you can tell a better like funnel story.
Where they're in the stage. Yeah, that's actually very smart. So now let's talk about a specific tactic, a tactic that you guys are experts at, which is, you know, activating this data through paid media and specifically paid social. How should a marketer think of when they get from whatever sources they choose? So they get a list of accounts with a certain score. When they're thinking of activating through paid social, what do you guys recommend your customers? Yeah. How should they think about it?
Yeah, I mean, the standard way, and there's some integrations and some not, like our platform does this well, but there's also like intent that's plugged directly into LinkedIn, for example, you know what I mean? And so there's integrations where you can piece together pretty good automation to take your intent data and feed it into targeted ads. So what we like to, I mean, what we recommend, we'll take it from the like very manual place first. So manual place, download a list of accounts, you know what I mean, that are showing intent with a score. Maybe you break the score up into different segments. It depends on how much you have in that intent source, really. But like, okay, maybe I'm breaking it up into like 1 to 30, 31 to 60, 61 plus, or whatever the scores are. So you can personalize it a little bit more. And yeah, then you just upload it, get the matching in the ad platform, layer on your job titles, anything else that you need in there, geos, et cetera. And, you know, just ICP, right? So like intent is going to be everybody. And then you got your ICP, so you want to layer that on. And then let it run. But then you got to update, you know, intent is changing constantly.
Every day.
That's why, And so that's why it's like, it's hard to run intent-based campaigns that are really fresh, you know what I mean? And like always updated. Because if you're doing that manual way, then you're like, oh, I got to download, I got to upload. And then, oh, by the way, most of these platforms need 48 hours to do the matching. So you're 2 days behind. Even if you're immediately on it, you're 2 days behind. Now that's not even something we can get over, you know, sometimes, but the platforms have to match. So you got to like be thinking about that. And because intent is changing, you also want to pull people out, you know what I mean, that are no longer showing intent. And I think what a lot of people do is they just keep adding to the audience and they never take out the people that are no longer showing intent. So it's like that time as a B2C buyer, you go to a site, you know what I mean, that's selling something and you're like, I just bought it, still getting retargeted forever. And it's like it's in the same vein. And so if you've got a way of dynamically updating that from the intent source into the ad platform every day, then it's a lot fresher than obviously manually doing it. And so that's what you want to get to is like, okay, let me create a machine that basically just nobody has to touch, that takes the intent data, gets it into the ad platforms, matches it with my ICP, and then it's just always on.
2 questions there, Jason. Which ad platform do you see it's being used the most and being most effective?
Yeah, I mean, it's the ones where you can automatically upload lists of companies and add these things to. So your LinkedIn, Facebook. Now Facebook, I don't know if they have any integrations to like B2B intent providers. Maybe they do, I don't know. But like that's where you could use a platform like ours and just have that seamlessly happen. So really any ad platform that will take a list of accounts, ideally domains, right? Because you don't want to be working with like company names like nobody does, but ideally domains. So intent data always comes with domains. And then if your ad platform will accept domains, great, you can do it. And so, yeah, it's really like any channel that will do that. I mean, you can even do it in Google Ads and limit your paid search results, you know, if you want to.
What do you mean by that, Jason? Like from a Google search?
Oh, so even Google Ads will take, you can upload an audience list into Google Ads using email addresses like we do in our platform.
Yeah.
And you can add it to a paid search campaign, and it limits the search results to just the people in there. And so that way, if you're like, let's say you're a new entrant, but in a big market where paid search is just ridiculously
expensive,
cost prohibitive for you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Then I can only show the paid search results to people that are directly in my target account list, maybe already showing some intent. And you can basically say like, okay, great. I'm going to limit my spend on this to just the people that I want to actually see the result.
So you're filtering on that and you're saying, I'm going to double down on that. I'll pay extra just because of that.
And a lot of people don't, and sometimes you don't even have to pay extra. It's just like you're still getting in on the auction. You're just limiting where your results are. And sometimes it's actually even cheaper because you're getting into it when there's more people and there's a little bit more competition, but you can limit some of those, like you can limit some of the spend on things that aren't working or people that you just don't want to see it. And it also depends on like what search terms are used to find your product. And are those mixed with other platforms that you just don't even compete with? So and there's like, even we're always looking at new platforms, and most platforms that want to have some B2B capability are accepting domains and they're translating those. So like, I think even TikTok now, you know what I mean? Like the ad platforms that most people know as B2C have B2B capability around these domains as well.
Like a YouTube would also have. I think
YouTube, you can also, there's a lot of different ways to build audiences in YouTube too, which are really interesting for B2B. Like you can base it on people who subscribe to other channels. So you can actually get into your competitors' stuff, you know what I mean? Like pretty interestingly, but yeah.
So let me ask this question from when someone is thinking of activating on paid, let's say paid social, both on Facebook and on LinkedIn, you can target natively, but the idea of intent and the buying committee that you guys add, the ICP fit of contacts, allows them to focus on a specific set of buyers. Yes. If that is the case, should a marketer then say, what, I don't care about any other targeting, I will only focus on this intent, buyers within those accounts, and show an ad? Yeah. Is that what you guys see, or is it a mix? Are they hedging their bets?
So for most high growth companies, using intent only won't be enough because there's only a certain companies researching, you know what I mean? And the intent provider can only show you those, you know? And so
they cannot manufacture intent.
Right. Yep, exactly. And so if you're saying like, oh, now I can imagine there's some scenarios where like there's enough intent and maybe not enough players and like you could live on that for a while. Yeah. But I can't imagine any scenario where like that could actually take you to a high growth, rate and where you're like getting to 50 million, $100 million ARR, because there's just probably not enough. And if there's enough, guess what? You got competitors popping up. Right. I mean, because they see it. They're just like, oh, look at that white space over there. This tons of intent, not served very well. And so it's just not going to last forever. And so like use intent, use it, maximize it. Right. So like what the play is maximize the intent first. Cause like that's some external third-party data you just don't have in other places. Then demand creation. You know what I mean? Demand capture still too, because like intent sources aren't going to capture everybody in market for you. So some demand capture tactics still, but a lot of demand creation, which is the long tail of like, okay, I am going after people who may not even be pain aware yet. You know what I mean? They're just kind of like, oh, I'm doing great in my role. Like everything's going well. They don't see 6 months down the road, the bomb's about to drop on something. But they don't have that pain yet. Yeah. And so you got to get in front of them. You got to get them to know who you are, start to build a relationship through marketing before they get to that pain place. You know what I mean? And so you're starting to build your own, you're building your own demand pipeline with demand creation. Whereas intent is getting you at the people that are closer or in market now.
Understood. And from a tactic perspective, Jason, one thing that we hear marketers talk about is providing air cover to their SDR outreach. Do you see, like from a tactic perspective, like do you guys recommend that, okay, there's a list of accounts that have shown intent. We know who the buyers are. We're going to show an ad, but at the same time, don't wait for them to see an ad, click and come to your website, fill out a demo campaign or download an asset. Give it to your SDRs now at the same time. Is that how it is? Or
this is more of a philosophical choice at a company. Yep. And so the choice really is, the choice, I'm going to put it pretty bluntly. The choice is, do marketers do the marketing or do SDRs do the marketing?
True.
And by me saying that, hopefully the marketers are like, well, marketing should do the marketing. Yeah. So the way we do it is we only hand off demo requests to the SDRs. And so we do the marketing up until that point where they're ready. I'm not saying using SDRs as marketers is a bad thing. Don't get me wrong. It just depends, right? It depends on where you're at and what your company does and like just the best motion. I'm a big proponent of just like, don't put a goal around what it is, put a goal around finding the efficient frontier between demo, like marketing carrying it all the way and an SDR carrying it part of the way from a lead.
So one question I have there, Jason, is, so let's say you are, and let the SDRs, like marketing gives the handover is once someone books a demo request and then the SDR follow up. That's great. What if there isn't enough demo requests happening? Well, there might be a bigger problem than intent because marketing might not be working. But what if in your platform, can a marketer upload a list, a target account list using intent, show an ad, and maybe set up a workflow that says, if this company or this set of companies have clicked these ads more than 5 times, only then give it to BDRs, even them before them booking a meeting. Can that kind of thing be done?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there are some people that will absolutely convert higher through personal contact from an SDR. And so leveraging that data and just seeing, and what we see actually a lot is impressions actually work even without a click sometimes. And so knowing that like, oh, actually I've impressed this ad on this account 100 times now. And then, oh, now I see them on the website. And we actually see that, we see that happening. And so, but yeah, I mean, if you have a way of looking at and analyzing and reporting on that intent that's going on, like, oh, clicked ads, saw them come to the website, or even clicked ad and didn't come to the website, but just like a lead gen form popped up or something, and you've got this intelligence and the SDR has time, you know what I mean? Then like, yes, absolutely.
Would the ad platforms give you that insight?
Some of them can. Yeah, some of them can. So for example, like LinkedIn doesn't usually give you impressions at an account level, but some partners like us, we actually get that. We get the full stream and it's not even sample data. So we can actually show in our platform the impressions in LinkedIn and not just clicks.
Within an account.
Yeah, within an account. Yes. Yeah.
And that data can be passed to the sales team as even before they become an MQL or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Amazing. And so then you can, and you can just like pass that all over. You can even give it a score if you want to. Hey, here's now it's not going to tell you the people that clicked because that's privacy issues that the LinkedIn's not going to give us. But, you know, like, oh, this is the number of impressions, this is the number of clicks happened from this account. And that rate is higher than these other accounts. You know what I mean? So like, oh, let me push that one to the top and let me do some outreach. And then it's like, oh, great. Let me go research maybe the right contact who might be the person who came to the website, find, a couple people and outbound to them and just kind of see. And the outbound should always be like really light. Some folks from you guys popped on our website. I just noticed it. I'm your rep. I got an alert. Just here if you've got any questions, you got a nice friendly over here.
Yeah.
And that can work really well.
Yeah. So that is great. So one thing that you talked about intent is, personalizing the content. In theory, it sounds great, but from a scalability perspective, it's a nightmare, because I remember talking to a large enterprise SaaS company. They're like, what you are saying is great, that these people are researching with a competitor. They're talking about more of a topic. They're talking about an event. You are showing me all of this, but I do not have that many very different kinds of content.
Yeah, that's a problem across the board, unfortunately, with a lot of marketing teams that I talk to. And I talk to a lot of our customers. And so I see this like firsthand. A lot of the customers that actually churn from us, we've never had a churn because the platform didn't work. You know what I mean? Which is interesting. It usually has to do with the input. You know what I mean? Product market fit, the content, like they don't have enough variable content or enough content to try. So they have like 3 pieces of content. And they're like, well, great. I've been running this for a year. Can you do it better? Like, well, maybe a little bit, but like you're not going to get those stepped improvements with that. You need content. You need things to try. And that gets into the whole like importance of experimentation in marketing, which we don't need to get into, but you have to have content. And to start, you just need more content. It doesn't have to start personalized. More content first, and then light personalization. So like the easiest thing could be like, okay, I've got intent data and just 3 different levels of people that could be in my buying cycle that just have different needs. And I'm just going to like slightly customize my messaging based on that need. CMO, it could all be in marketing too. CMO wants to hear one thing, VP of marketing wants to hear one thing, and then the user wants to hear one thing. And so I might just slightly customize that messaging and go to that like decision maker buying committee.
Understood. No, this is great. One thing you talk a lot about G2 as an intent source, or these trust radius or Capterra. There's a bunch of them, and you guys use that as one of the sources of intent, as from your
Yeah,
marketing
yeah,
perspective.
yes, just one. Yep, yep. We use
And
one. Yep.
is it more for the lower funnel piece, Jason? So if you know
Yes.
someone is researching on a competitor, and
Yeah, I use G2 primarily, yes, for
yeah,
lower funnel, and just to understand a little bit more, like, oh, did they see my page, competitive page? Did they just look at the category page? You know what I mean? And so it gives me a little bit more detail. So yeah, I use that more in lower funnel, but I honestly like use you guys. I
yeah,
use Bombora more, in the top of the funnel stuff
yeah,
because that's more topic based. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And to
yeah,
me, that stuff is a little bit more black boxy, you know what I
hmm,
mean? Then because there's some algorithms going on
yeah,
there to like turn the data that you're getting into like something that's useful. And
for
so
sure.
that's the difference. And I tend to like to work with raw data as much as possible. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so
No, that's great. Look, Jason, this is fantastic. I learned quite a few things that I was not even aware. I thought I knew these ad platforms and things like this. So thank you for that.
always changing. Yeah, yeah,
Right? They're
absolutely. This is
always
fun.
changing, and you
Yeah.
talked about how to activate. I'm pretty sure marketers will find value out of it. One question that I ask all our guests at the end is, the name of the show is Hell Bent on Intent. So I have to ask you, are you hell bent on intent?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm a
Awesome.
big believer in it. Yes, absolutely. So I'm a follower and a believer for sure.
Amazing. Amazing. Very good. Thank you, Jason. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
If you like this video, please drop us a like, let us know what you think of it. And if you're hell bent on intent, click on the link in description to stay updated when each new episode drops. See you there.